Okay, welcome everyone. We're letting everyone join us. We have all of our students coming on right now, which is wonderful. All right, I'd like to welcome our Congressional Award at Home community once again. Thank you so much for participating today. I am Erica Heiss. I serve as the National Director of the Congressional Award Foundation, and I'm joining you here from Washington, D.C. Today's topic is Pathway to Career, which has quickly become one of our most popular webinars. And we'd like to recognize our friends at Atrium Health and Boeing for helping lead today's discussions and our programming. Thank you. And we are honored to have Congressman Greg Murphy, MD, of North Carolina as our congressional speaker today. To begin, please take a moment to acquaint yourself with the Q&A box where you can submit some questions for today's speakers. Also the chat box where you can share with us where you're coming from and say hello. We're always curious of where all of our medalists and participants are joining us from today, so please do that. Today's conversation will be recorded and shared with everyone following the conclusion of our program. We'll also be sending a post-webinar survey to our participants, so for anyone who's looking for their personal development credit, please look for that follow-up email from us. We are also streaming on Facebook Live, so welcome to our Facebook community today. We have a lot to cover and some wonderful guest speakers, so I am going to dive right in with our first guest. It is my pleasure to introduce our board member, Jim Dunn of Atrium Health. As a member of the executive leadership team, Jim Dunn leads the teams that focus on the engagement of Atrium Health's teammates from recruitment through retirement, including workforce relations, diversity and inclusion, compensation, benefits, learning and organizational development, teammate health, recognition, events and HR communications, external affairs, corporate and community outreach, and government relations. Mr. Jim Dunn, welcome.
Thank you. The first thing I'm going to have to do is have them shorten that bio. I didn't realize they had all of that. So thank you, Erica, and good afternoon, everyone. It's really an honor to be with you today. In particular, since I'm on vacation this week, but I would not miss this opportunity of paying this forward with you for this very important launch. As Erica mentioned, I am a member of the Congressional Award Board of Directors, and as such, Atrium Health is pleased to serve as a partner to support our generation of young leaders. She gave the title Chief People and Culture Officer. For those of you who are not familiar with the fancy titles we have now in HR, I'm head of HR. When I started 30 years ago, it was personnel, but we all have big titles now, but the work is still equally important. So in my capacity, it's no surprise that I'm personally very committed to and feel that it's critical to provide pathways for all students to find opportunities for employment. And so really happy to participate in this today. One thing I will say to you that, as organization leaders like myself and others who you hear from, we're definitely not getting any younger, and we need to be very intentional about ensuring a pipeline of sustainable talent. So in working with the Congress and a number of education and labor partners, we understand, particularly in healthcare, the specific need for STEM-related skill sets to fill jobs in many sectors. So while I am head of HR, my undergraduate degree was in chemistry, and that's a whole nother story, but I will say to you, be open to the pathways that may come before you, because I never in a million years thought I would land where I'm doing right now, which I absolutely love. So just have an open mind. At 16, 17 years old, you don't know all careers. Even today, there are new jobs that are forming remotely every day. So just keep an open mind. And what I'll say in closing is that we're most excited that the Congressional Award Partnership STEM Scholars Program is really encouraging you guys to earn a congressional award using STEM. And I would encourage you to do that, mainly because the pipeline is not there. And for whatever reason, it's become a huge priority for those of us in healthcare and many other industries, because too few college students are really majoring in STEM-related majors. So I would encourage you guys to do that. Happy to be here. You have another panel later, And hopefully you ask some really good questions and we could provide that feedback. So with that, it is my privilege and honor to be here with Congressman Greg Murphy of North Carolina's 3rd Congressional District. Dr. Murphy, I learned, is a urologist by training, and as you heard earlier, is a member of the Education and Labor Committee and Subcommittee on Higher Education and Workforce Investment. So with that, Dr. Murphy.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Dunn, and thank you, Erica, and hello to all of you guys. It brings me back to the days when I was 16 and 17, many years ago. These are exciting times for you. Your future is literally a blank page, and it is you that write that book. And it's exciting because the world is full of opportunities that you have in front of you that I and maybe Dr. Dunn did not have. So I think it is a fantastic thing. I'd love to share with you a little bit about my story, about my thoughts. I've been in medicine now for 30 years. I finished medical school many years ago, and I had an interest and a pursuit in studies in science, in the field of science, and that love for science has really served me well. And since then, and really continues to this day, I'm kind of a nerd and read as much of that stuff as I can as possible because I really feel that science is very interesting. Despite now, I had a different change in course, just like Dr. Dunn did. I'm in the political arena in Congress, but I actually still practice medicine. In fact, I'm the only member of Congress, as far as physicians, that still practice medicine. It's because of the love I feel for the subject matter, as well as my patients. That love of learning, and especially for STEM subjects, needs to be passed down, as I have learned, to our next generation. I am now what they call the ranking member, which is the highest member of the minority party on the subcommittee of higher education and workforce investment. So we are very much in tune to making sure that our colleges and universities are providing the educational experiences for you as you move forward. And let me just pull one thing aside, that not everyone by any means needs to go to a four-year college or four-year university. There are many of you that are on this that may be able to do things and have a wonderful career using a community college. So don't ever rule that out. I do believe that it is critical now that our students are encouraged to study in the fields of science and technology. We are getting behind. This nation, the United States, is getting behind our international adversaries, China especially, Russia, the other countries where we're not having enough of our students pursue science-related fields. So I would encourage you guys, really for, if not anything, almost a patriotic reason, to help us keep up the race as it is. Young professionals, the students, our employees, our children, our grandchildren are our future, as are you guys. Today in STEM jobs, ones that the typical baby boomer like me, we really aren't prepared for unless we started those years ago. It's hard to transition into those as a second job into this line of work, whether it be applied science. There's so much now going on in the computer science field or other technological fields. STEM education is simply one of the most critical areas that we have in education and employment as you, our young professionals, seek to excel as we face the 21st century. According to a Georgetown University study, about 76 million baby boomers, that's me, born after 1964, will soon retire. But only about 51 million people are there to replace them. So it's creating a big gap, a work gap of about 25 or so million. STEM education really is going to be key, that we get that gap shortened with folks that go into the science and technology fields. We must make a workforce adapted to the next century. So much is being done now in robotics. So much is being done in genetic engineering that wasn't even done 10 years ago. And we need you guys to be the future of those fields. We need to find ways to entice you into other, and your colleagues into studying STEM, particularly minorities and women. STEM subjects and STEM studies do not have any demographic whatsoever. The young professional workforce now is more diverse than any other generation before. Hispanic minorities make up about a third of the young professional workforces. African Americans make up about another 11 to 15%. And a 2019 community study found that the total civilian population aged 16 and above was about 10.8 million. Of those 10.8 million, about a quarter are women. So there's still much more untapped potential that we have for all demographics to come into STEM education. Now, you guys have had a tough time this last year going through COVID. It's been an experience that none of us as older adults ever experienced, and you guys are hit right there in your high school careers. It's had many alarming effects on young professionals. Close to 80% of the students have been adversely affected by school closures and virtual learning transitions. You know, as I found out personally with one of my children, some people don't learn as well just being on a TV screen rather than being in a classroom. In fact, about 40% of young people internationally right now, because of some of the uncertainty, are uncertain of their future career prospects. 1 in 6 young people had stopped working since the beginning of this pandemic, and were more likely to stop working because of the crisis. And it's specifically also worse for lower income individuals. So as this nation needs to get back to work, and this is what we need to do, the demands of technology have not changed. In fact, they have increased. And so the demands of the need for STEM education really needs to be a priority. These STEM jobs are the future of our economy, and employment in STEM occupations is outpacing non-STEM occupations probably on a rate of 2 to 1. Healthcare jobs, as Dr. Dunn is from the healthcare field, as am I, are going to be needed more and more because we have a growing and aging population. And one thing which you all have to think about, STEM careers actually pay usually a lot more than other careers. And in fact, in 2019, the average STEM worker earned about $89,000. That's a lot of money. And so, but aside from the monetary benefits that a STEM education may provide, you know, by its fundamental nature, it teaches people how to think critically, work as a team, and develop project management skills. Engineering, not coincidentally, is the #1 field of study for American CEOs. Those are qualities, the STEM fields give you qualities to help you continue to foster innovation and to keep you in a lifelong learning mode so that you'll be successful as we move forward. So I thank you guys for listening today. I just would encourage you, the future is open to you. So anything that we can do, we're there for you to encourage you, but I would encourage you to study in the science and technology fields. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Murphy. And that was incredible. So a majority of CEOs were engineering majors. I never realized that.
Yep.
So let's just start. I'm just going to ask a quick question for you and for Dr. Dunn as well. This is one of the questions that have been posed is passion. So our Congressional Award Program really encourages young people to try new things because you want to find that passion. You want to find what you're interested in, what you're good at. Speak to us about this question. How do I find a career that I am passionate about? Dr. Murphy, what are your thoughts?
You know, I think you have to ask yourself, what kind of learner are you? What things interest you? Because being in the future, when you come to a job, you don't want it to be something that you go just for a paycheck. You want to go to work every day. You want to enjoy what you do. Is it intellectually stimulating? Does it keep you wanting to learn more and more? And so you just kind of have to ask yourself, really, at that stage in life, what things interest you? Is it dealing mostly with people? Is it dealing with laboratory work? Is it a mixture of both? That's one reason I ended up in medicine. It's a great mixture of, I have both a science field, I'm a surgeon, I have a technical component, but then I also get to deal with people a lot. But a lot of engineers, it's not so much of a social construct, it's a critical construct. They're thinking, creating, innovating, get a problem, create it and solve it and move on. So it's really kind of asking yourself, what are your proclivities? What are you inclined to do? What do you like? And what are you best at?
Dr. Dunn, what are your thoughts?
I could just say ditto to all of that. I mean, because, you know, I'm going back to, you know, even at my age, I mean, not my age, at 16, 17, when I applied to colleges, I checked the major of what I was enjoying at the time. And at the time, senior year of high school, I was really enjoying AP chemistry. So I was like, I love this. I'm going to major in chemistry. And with no interest in going to medical school or anything like that, it was senior year. And I wasn't going to back out then because my parents was coming for graduation and I had to move forward. So I had a chemistry degree and I was like, what do I want to do? So I was fortunate to be able to land my first job as a research scientist with Georgia Tech. But it was subsequent to that I started learning about other careers. And so I just go back to stay open-minded, because you really never know what's going to interest you and what passion is going to jump out at you. I'm also on faculty at MIT. So of course I see a lot of engineering, STEM students that come in and they're majoring in engineering because they're good at it. But somewhere, just similar to me, second year, third year college, they find other interests. And so you'll see a lot of liberal art programs that are popping up at a lot of these STEM schools, because music, math, engineering, a lot of those things go hand in hand. And we've seen people make some awesome transitions. So finding your passion is staying open to ideas and not locking yourself in too soon and early.
Great answers.
Yeah.
Second question is best piece of career advice. Someone just starting their first job, what is something that you would have told yourself that you know now? Who wants to start?
I'm gonna make Dr. Dunn do that one.
I was hoping to think about that one. Okay. Again, for me, what I didn't know is I didn't know how to stay open. Sometimes you need to look at what do you do well, and what do you enjoy, not just because you're good in science or good in math, and so you just choose a linear career. I just can't say enough. Stay open, expose yourself to STEM, because we need it. And you heard Dr. Murphy, there's shortage areas there, but still stay open. If I knew anything, I would have not locked myself into one type of career opportunity, and I probably would have interned in other areas to explore different industries and professions. All right, I did it. Now your turn.
I'm going to ditto a little bit about what Dr. Dunn said. Stay open. I agree with that completely. If I recall correctly, I believe there's one statistic that says that only 25% of individuals stay actually in their occupation, in their field of study. In other words, if they pick one thing, I mean, Dr. Dunn, you're a perfect example of that. They pick one field, but they, many times, kept themselves open to something else and end up doing something entirely different in your career.
Yeah.
The basic thing that I would encourage you guys is I hope really at this point in time, you know how to study, you know how to think, you're open to that, because no matter what field that you do, that you entertain with, knowing how to study, know how to think critically, knowing how to persevere is going to be critical to you. And I think a lot of things today, especially, you need to develop an attitude of perseverance. The world, I will just tell you very plainly, the world doesn't owe you anything. You have to go out there and get it yourself. And you can do it. Anybody on this earth can do it. We all have different obstacles that we have to encounter. I came from a single parent household. My dad passed away when I was young. Everybody's got a little something in their life that has brought them down one way or the other. But you cannot let that defray you. Dr. Ben Carson, I don't know if anybody knows that name. He ran for president. He was the head of neurosurgery at Johns Hopkins. He and I have become very good friends. He has a very, very difficult story. He came from a very poor inner city neighborhood, and he became one of the most renowned brain surgeons in the world. You can do this. You have to persevere. But as you move forward, as Dr. Dunn says, you must maintain yourself being open to other opportunities.
Be open, remain open-minded, and know that everyone has obstacles in front of them, but you can overcome them, right? Yeah. I love that. Final it's almost like a quick fire question, is up and coming career fields to watch. I know you guys are both in STEM and you're promoting STEM, which I think is great. But for any of our students, are there particular fields maybe within STEM that you think are sort of up and coming?
Well, I'll just quickly say in healthcare, there's many, many professions outside of becoming a physician or a nurse. And where we're seeing some of our substantial shortages are in the 14 different allied health areas. So going back to Dr. Murphy's point, those are careers that you can obtain after an associate's degree to go into a lot of those. So if becoming a surgeon or a physician or a nurse is not your path, within healthcare, there are many other areas to look at. And I would say the allied health professions would be one.
Yeah. Agree with Dr. Dunn. Two other fields that that are going to explode are robotics and we're going to have robots doing things for us that are directed by us, but doing things for us in the future. And the other thing is genetic engineering. It's going to explode the field of medicine in the future. It's doing it right now. But the next 25 years, we're going to rewrite the entire history of medicine since man began. So those are two other big fields.
This is all really exciting and very helpful. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate you, Dr. Murphy, Dr. Dunn. Good to bring some North Carolinians together. That's always nice. And we will see you all next time as we turn to our next panel. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
All right. All right. It is now my pleasure to introduce Mr. Raymond Hall, who is VP of Organization Effectiveness and Analytics at Boeing. Boeing is the world's largest aerospace company and leading manufacturer of commercial jetliners and defense, space, and security. And I'm really excited for Ray to share some of his story with you. He is a board member, he is a friend. He had served part of his career in the military with the US Army at Fort Bragg, and he made life-changing decision to move into the civilian sector. Raymond Hall, so good to see you. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Oh, good to see you too, Erica. Seems like it's been a while. And thank you to all the participants who are joining today. Erica covered a lot of my background. I would like to say, though, that I've taken a non-traditional path to into my executive role here at Boeing. I started my career early on. I'm not going to tell you how long ago because you'll know my age. Let's just say it was a long time ago, though. But I started with the military, and then I just continued to do a lot of the things that you've heard from Dr. Dunn and Dr. Murphy around just betting on yourself, taking chances, not staying comfortable, making myself uncomfortable by trying different opportunities outside of where I thought I was going to go. And long story short, that led me to another opportunity where, you know, who knows what's going to happen. And my role is made up of a bunch of different pieces of the HR organization. We call it organization effectiveness, but it's made up of a number of different areas of HR to help drive business results. So, Erica, I am very, very glad to be here. Obviously, Boeing is very interested in these type of opportunities because of how important STEM education is to our business. We have a number of different programs that support STEM education. And we really want to strengthen and diversify the pipeline of skilled workers. It's a business necessity for us. Our primary objective is to graduate more students who are ready to enter aerospace and advanced manufacturing careers in STEM-focused post-secondary education. So again, I'm very happy to be here today and looking forward to the discussion.
Excellent, and thank you for joining us from Chicago. It's always nice to have someone there from the Midwest. That is perfect. And now I want to introduce our next panelist, Gerard Camacho, who also of Atrium Health, AVP of Workforce Development. Gerard is responsible for the design and implementation of Atrium Health's workforce development strategy and the creation of the Career Development Center, impacting over 80,000 staff members and the Charlotte community. Gerard, wonderful to see you. Tell us a little bit about you and what it is that you're doing over at Atrium.
Absolutely. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you, Erica. And Raymond, pleasure to meet you via this venue. One of the things that, really clicked whenever we were speaking about careers before is that there's non-traditional paths, right? And such is my story. I came from Mexico in the 1990s, and in the pursuit of college readiness. And my dad's an American, and my mom's from Mexico, and that's how we ended up here. I started medical school in Mexico, and I could not finish medical school here in the United States because of affordability issues. And those are many of the things that many of our students in all these sectors are really trying to figure out, right? What is going to be the access? What are going to be the opportunities? And my story goes with alignment and taking those chances and taking those opportunities into moving from one challenge perhaps to a different opportunity in the same or different sectors. Switched to finance and economics, and I was able to do that through the University of Texas system. And one of the things that came out of that was later on, I didn't know the ability to do workforce development planning and really be passionate about that, and how is it that we drive socioeconomic design in terms of talent needs of the organization and talent management and projecting and forecasting what are going to be the talent needs of the system. Also with how is it that we connect those bridges for individuals and for opportunity as we continue to build our socioeconomic impact as an organization. You mentioned we're an 80,000 employee or teammate hospital system in different states. And one of the main things that we are doing is, for obvious reasons, trying to create that next talent that will come and become Atrium Health employees. But at the same time, how do we lift up our community, and how is it that we provide those opportunities to really rise up and to have, pathways to healthcare careers? And that's what the Career Development Center does. That's how we do it. We're really looking at what are going to be the next 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years talent needs and talent demands for our system. What are those gaps that are within our community? Where are those market untapped potential that is out there in the community, and how we create those talent pipelines into the system to provide both that talent that we need in the healthcare sector, as well as how do we communicate with the education system and collaborate with them to perhaps talk about early college models, right? And certification at the time they graduate from their educational system so they are job ready. There's nothing wrong with going and working in the service industry, but if we can go ahead and pull together a way by which individuals can go back to that basic learning methodology where they come out with that career readiness at the end of high school, then we've done so much, not only for the community, but for those systems that are in need of talent, right? And I'm talking about construction, healthcare, IT. When you were talking about manufacturing, that's also part of the discussion. So that's a little bit of who I am and what I do, and that's how the Career Development Center at Atrium Health really tries to connect both community and space in terms of how we create talent pipelines for our healthcare careers.
Excellent, excellent, all good information. So we're going to dig in, we're going to dig deep. We have these two outstanding panelists, and we have a lot of questions. So we're putting you guys on the spot, but this is where it gets real. So most of our students are high school right now. They're probably 17, 16 years old on average. And so they're there in high school, they're hearing all this wonderful intel about how to become the next engineer, how to, get your foot in the door. But right now I'm in high school. So Ava from North Carolina, just to continue this North Carolina trend, is asking, what are the best high school classes and volunteer opportunities to take advantage of when you're in high school and when you don't know what you want to do? And first, maybe I should say, I don't think most people in high school know what they want to do, and that's okay. So let's start there. That is okay. It's exploration time. So talking to a high schooler and giving them some advice on what they should be doing now, what classes they should be taking, and service opportunities, what would you say? Ray, would you want to start us off?
Yeah, I can. For me, this is a fairly easy one, given no surprise as to what my company does. But I don't think you can go wrong with STEM subjects. I mean, you've heard a lot on the call about that already, but any classes involving science, technology, engineering, mathematics are great courses to take. But you also touched on something, Erica, that I think is not often discussed when you talk about service, because outside of just the core courses, take advantage of the volunteer opportunities that your school has or your community has, because that's even becoming more and more important at companies as well. We want to hire the best and brightest, the smartest people, but we want to hire good people too. And so when you start taking advantages of community type of programs and getting involved in those type of activities, I think you start to differentiate yourself from the rest of the candidate population.
That's good advice. Gerard.
I definitely agree and ditto that. Raymond brought on a really good and important point, which is volunteerism. Another way by which you can do that, and of course STEM, there's such a thing called CTE, which is technical education here in the Mecklenburg district. And that gives you a pathway and a career towards that sector that you may be interested in, right? And like you were talking about before, Eric, it's really hard to know and understand what you really want to do without knowing or being exposed to those careers, right? And having been into those roles, or at least visually see, explore, and shadow them. So my recommendation for students would be at this point, try to find out shadowing and observation opportunities. Try to connect with local government and educational systems, because sometimes, actually most times, there's going to be a youth employment program somewhere, right? Where organizations are combining efforts together. Boeing and Bank of America and Atrium Health and some other key players of the region, maybe pulling together, numbers to hire students for paid summer internships. If you're from a family that you need to contribute to the household income, as we're many of us, then these are going to be the opportunities that you want to seek, right? Because we know and understand that that's part of the process. You cannot always just volunteer freely. Not everyone has the luxury to do that. So seek those opportunities, seek those shadowing and observations opportunities. Look for CTE or some technical education. A lot of the school systems have those college readiness plans, which will help you graduate with a certificate in that general area of interest. And that would also help you be job ready. And that's a huge leverage.
I love that. We'll have to share that with our students following this. We'll share some notes on that. Thank you. It's a great suggestion. So moving from high school, and I'm just going to break off into two different segments here, because I do think that a lot of our folks that are in high school, a lot will move on to college and take that path, and some will not. Some will either enter the workforce or seek alternative, gap year or AmeriCorps, Peace Corps, going into the military. There are different paths for different people. So I just want to explore that for a minute, because I think there's probably a lot of pressure being a junior or a senior and thinking, I'm not sure if college is for me. And if that's the case, hey, that is fine. But what are some of the considerations? What are some of the options? And what are your thoughts? So Ray, I'm going to start with you.
Erica, can you repeat the question? Because I couldn't.
Yes. So for those that maybe are not college bound, they're not thinking I'm gonna go, at least not straight into college, but maybe that next year is not college for me. What are some of the thoughts, some of the considerations, and some of the options for students at that age that may not be going into a traditional 4-year model?
Yeah, so, and it's a great question, because I think it takes some people a little bit longer than some others to really figure out even what you want to do. Is it college or is it something else, and trying to really find your passion. And I think, it goes back to what Dr. Dunn was talking about, earlier, is just try different stuff. Because when you do that, I think it also will help you to develop a number of things, and you'll learn a whole lot about yourself. The other thing, though, is go and take a career aptitude test, because that's a good thing that I think is underutilized now. But it's a good way to help match what you might be interested in versus potential careers. And then that can help guide your next steps. Now, don't use the test as a hard, fast rule. I would use it as guidance, because just like you said, not every student wants to attend a traditional 4-year college. There are great avenues and great career paths that, people who may be more interested in using their hands and going more on the tech side of things, and may want to be, they're better served by attending a trade or a specialty school. But one of the other aspects that I would really ask this group to consider, if they haven't already, is find a mentor too. Someone who may be in the field that you're interested in going, who may have attended a university you may be interested in attending. I can almost guarantee you that when you surround yourself by people who are already in the field doing what they love, there will be a passion about what they do that will rub off on you. And they will also tell you what other people won't tell you. They'll tell you the glamorous sides of the school or the job or what it's like. And they'll also tell you the other sides of it too, like rotating shifts where you work in 24 hours, the facility is open 24 hours a day versus what you might think it is. So mentors are a really good resource. They've always been a great resource for me and to really help guide my path.
I love that. Career aptitude test and the power of mentors. That's great. Gerard, what are your thoughts?
I agree again. I think that self-knowledge is very important and self-discovery is even more. So if you are aware of what your occupational interests and motivational skills are, it's a very good window into what you want and may not want to do. And the other thing is that, you know, students at that age may not be, you know, very well aware or versed onto all the other different careers and opportunities that are out there in the healthcare system, right? It's not only nurses and doctors. It's not only probably mechanical engineers are born, right? There's a lot of people that are from finance and HR and counseling and things like that that could become part of that, you know, group of job families that are out there within an organization. So self-discovery, of course, is one of the best ones. Then the other one is knowing and understanding that, you know, a 4-college degree is not always a solution. Both my brother and a friend that went to do, my brother was a physics and mathematics major and ended up with a master's degree and never really used it. Now he's in consulting and he's doing his own thing through technical trade, right? There's another friend of mine that went and got his PhD at Yale in divinity, and he had to go back and relearn and get a certificate in IT so that he can get a job, and ended up doing more with that certificate, 2-year certificate, than his PhD from Yale. So really, college is not always a solution, and as organizations are continue to evolve and progress, we are revising all those job descriptions where we're saying, wait a minute, the college level that we were requiring before may not necessarily be a need, right? It may be a want, but we really are focusing on the skills and competencies, which can be part of a certificate program at a local college and a 2-year degree. So know and understand that there's a lot of options out there for you. There's a lot of technical careers that will guide you and lead you into family sustaining livable wages. So probably getting with your career coach or counselor at the school, going and meeting with the career counselors at the community colleges and some other members of the community. I agree with Raymond with the ability to have a mentor. Not everyone has that possibility to get a mentor in one of those areas or to connect with an executive or something like that. But there's a lot of people in the community that can make that happen, and there's organizations that do that as they provide not only that, but wraparound services for some of our urban youth. Right, so making sure that you try to discover what those resources are and connecting is also a very good opportunity. And knowing and understanding, like Raymond said, what are going to be your skills, your motivational interests, but then how it can link into other jobs and what kind of jobs are out there that could be the 4-year or 2-year and following your path or looking for an apprenticeship. There's a lot of options out there.
There are a lot of options. So first of all, I need to pause because so many questions are coming in with how do I get a job at Boeing and how do I get a job at Atrium? So we'll be sharing links with all of our students following this of how to apply and how to look for those opportunities at both companies. So we thank the students for all of their interest, and perhaps Ray and Gerard, you will have just an influx of applications coming at you pretty soon, but that's okay.
Sounds good.
And I think a lot of the advice that we've just given really also applies to those students in college right now who will be looking at their next steps, to talk to their career counselors, to seek the mentorship there through the university. I think if you're at a 4-year college or university, you likely have even more resources at your disposal than high school with proper channels and associations and networks and teachers and professors and people that you can ask for advice and can hopefully steer you into the right direction. Many people are asking about getting hired and how to set yourself apart. I think that's the big question. I'm sure both of you in your careers have seen many resumes come across your desk or have been in groups with other executives and other HR folks that are trying to make the decision of who to bring onto the team. So now is the question, how do I get hired? Tell me what will set me apart and what is it that you're looking for? Gerard, do you want to start that one?
Absolutely. There's this story, Robin Patak at Parkland Health and Hospital System in Dallas, Texas. He's a guy he started volunteering for Parkland, and he wanted to really, he really wanted a job with our department in the healthcare system. And he started volunteering through his master's program because there were some hours that were requirements. And the guy just kept, coming in through the door and saying, what can I do? How can I get involved? Getting to know the hiring leaders and the managers, establishing a relationship. And I know and I understand that's not something that's a luxury, right? For many, the ability to work for free is not something that everyone can do. But he was doing that as he was doing his master's. And I think that that's one of the best examples that I've seen in terms of how to set yourself apart. Whenever there was an opening in a position where we could hire someone, we immediately thought of Robin. And there was no one compared to whatever he was doing because he already knew the organization. He was already culturally adept. He was already trained in the way that we were delivering, outcomes and things like that. So I think that if you have the opportunity to connect, the opportunity to know and learn who the hiring leaders are, and make those connections via LinkedIn, via whatever it is, then that is definitely a separator. How is it that you can set yourself apart from the rest of those individuals applying into those same roles?
That's perfect. That's great advice. Ray, what do you think?
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with anything. That's actually really excellent advice. The only thing I would add is, and for this group to keep in mind, by the time you get to the formal interview stage where you're sitting across the table or the desk from the hiring manager, it's highly likely they already know that you meet whatever minimum qualifications they have in place in terms of education and job experience. So while the interview may touch on the components of what's required for the job, I still think that there's an opportunity for a candidate to really distinguish themselves by discussing the alignment of the company values with your own personal values and showing how your volunteer efforts align with the organization's social responsibility initiatives and programs. That stuff matters because we know every business, regardless of industry, and I know we're talking about STEM, and with that comes a lot of process and different things like that, but it's still a people business, and people want to make sure that the person sitting across from them is a really, really good person and a good fit. And that's one way that you can demonstrate that by showing you've done your homework and you can bring to the table examples of how you're a good fit for that organization.
I love that focus on personal narrative. Our students are going to hear that quite a bit, whether you're applying for a scholarship or for college or even for a job. I had someone send me a personal narrative when I was putting my house on the market because they wanted to be selected. So, and it works. It truly works. So I really think that you're telling your story and what is, different about you, and that narrative, of whether it aligns with the corporate values or the values of the leader that you're potentially going to be working for, goes a very long way. So that's terrific advice. And LinkedIn was mentioned. Just want to encourage all of our students. I know a lot of folks have not quite gotten on to LinkedIn yet at this age, but I find it to be extremely helpful as someone who hires young people and places them in internships or coming onto our team or recommending them to others. The first thing I'm looking for is your LinkedIn profile. So if you don't have one, get one. And we will strongly consider a workshop in teaching you just how to do that. But I also think, obviously, take care, and the rest of your social media and whatever online presence you have has to be curated. You've got to really think about that and make sure that it's in line with your personal values. We're going to move on to more of a personal question for you guys to share with us, because I don't want to leave this opportunity without this question. This has come up in a couple of different ways in different forms, but what is something that you learned in your career that you were not taught in school? What is something that really just wouldn't be taught in the classroom, but you know it now and it would be helpful? Does anything come to mind? Whoever wants to start, that's a hard one, I know, but something.
Yeah, I think I'll let Gerard start with that.
Well, thank you, Raymond. I know exactly how Dr. Dunn felt with that last question too. So I think that one of those key pieces that you never learn in school, that you were kind of learning in an informal way, right? It's how to build relationships and how to really, solidify those partnerships for how do you work collaboratively with one another. I think that we're a great culture. We're a culture of drive. We're a culture of excellence, but we're also a very individualistic culture, right? And it's about your performance. How do you do things? And it's always about you. How do you develop yourself? How do you separate yourself? How do you do that? When we tend to forget about the collective effort that it takes to get things done at the team level whenever you're within an organization, right? And it doesn't matter if you're going to be in an individual contributor role, you know, it's your first job, you're part of a team, or you're a manager, or you're a director, or you're an AVP, or you're a VP, or you're an executive. Really, that collaboration, the ability to build relationships, that human factor, that emotional intelligence, and I know that some universities are teaching this now, that is key. That relationship building, that trust, the ability to build trust, the ability to have emotional intelligence, that is something they don't teach you in school unless you're going to, you know, Harvard or Yale, where there's an actual course for that now. But that is something that is essential for good performance and relationship and longevity within an organization too.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. The other thing, Erica, I would say is, you know, it's funny because when you're in school, you know, you take your time, you learn the material, there's some sort of test at the end of it, and you get a grade and you either pass or you fail. And that's how you determine whether you're a successful student or not. But in business, it doesn't work like that. Because what you try today, it may work, but tomorrow it may be totally irrelevant. And so one of the things that I didn't learn in school was how to embrace agility and being able to adapt to different things that you can't really see around the corner. Now, obviously there are courses that you can take to develop your strategic mindset and those sort of things where you know where to kind of anticipate, you know, some of these things, whether it's market driven, you know, or not. But that whole piece about being staying agile and being able to adapt and be nimble and move quickly was something that I certainly didn't learn in school. I learned it on the job.
That's great. That makes perfect sense, especially coming out of COVID, the ability to adapt. And this is a great question. So there are a lot of folks who are writing, asking about how do you get noticed once you're in the job, but especially in a remote work environment. What are some things you can do that you're noticed and valued? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I can start because that's one, you know, it's not, I can certainly understand why this population who's on the call would ask the questions, but we have employees every day asking the questions because this is something that's totally unprecedented that we're living through for the first time and we're doing it together. But it's an excellent question. I think it's important that, you know, that you're able to demonstrate how your work and your contributions are impacting the bottom line. And really using data and analytics to demonstrate your understanding of the importance of the data. If you're in a situation where you're participating on virtual calls, make sure you're present. Don't treat it as something, you know, off to the side. Show your managers and your leaders that you're there and be very present during those calls and always ask questions. When we first moved to remote working, we use various technologies simply to keep our teams connected, to get work done, you know, as efficiently as we could. But, you know, thinking back now, we also should be using those same technologies to network, to build relationships and demonstrate your ability to excel in any environment. COVID isn't the first workforce disruption that we've had. It certainly won't be the last. And I think having employees who are agile gives employers a competitive advantage.
Absolutely.
I agree 100%. And I think that, you know, COVID has taught us a lot. It has taught us that productivity is something that can be achieved even when working remote. And it's showed us that, you know, burnout is more likely whenever you're isolated. So I think that, you know, as we move through this process, and we're having the same conversation, Raymond, right now of, when we're going back, if we're going back, of course, the healthcare sector never stopped because we do have our clinical front face teammates that were always there, and they were, battling this pandemic head on. But then we had all the supporting staff that was remote, and the best way to get noticed, I think, and I'll go back to Raymond's point, is through those metrics and data. But I think that also we learned that, outcomes alone are not conducive to a good, healthy work balance process, and that burnout was very high. So there's twofold, right? One is the manager's responsibility to create that social connection. And that's where I was talking about that emotional intelligence, which is even harder to do whenever you're working remote, because we're trying to figure that out. And because it's not the same to have those conversations eye to eye, but it takes intentionality to build that trust and relationship. For the teammates that are producing, I think that, like Raymond was talking about, the ability to be present, the ability to, take those calls and participate, that glare-eyed, individual that is always in the background in those team meetings and does not report, or it causes concerns, right? And I think that the ability to be a little bit upfront and, trying to engage and trying to send the work, on time, and ask questions and try to figure out how do we connect. Because that's one of the main key, disruptors of these. Performance is there, outcomes are there, but the connection in between leader and teammates, or teammates and other teammates, is disrupted. So the ability to connect and to ask questions and to involve and to say, how can I help? How can I assist? Am I missing something? I want to make sure that we're aligned. And that comes from both the leader and the teammate as well. So I think that as long as you're doing that, as long as you're involved, as long as you're present and engaged, you're going to be fine.
Wonderful answers. I love to, some students are asking about corporate culture. What does it mean to have a culture? What is a good culture? And that's really difficult right now, especially in this remote environment and in COVID. And I think corporate culture is something that our students hear about, but they don't quite know what that means. Do you want to share just anything about your corporate culture, or why that's important, what to look for there? Because that is speaking to connection, as you mentioned, Gerard.
Well, of course, I can do that. It's just, our culture is shifting and evolving. I would say evolving more than shifting, right? There's all these social equity work that we're doing that is becoming atrium health. It's not only about diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's not only about succession planning. It's really about how do we relate to the community and the patient population that we serve. And that's driving, and it's at the same time that we're merging and acquiring other hospital systems, and we're becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. So the question of culture becomes even more difficult. But I think at its essence, what is starting to be our culture and what is starting to be the definition of what we value in teammates, and I think this is universal across all companies and systems, is the ability to connect into those core values that we have as an organization. And culture really is, you can have a lemma, you can have a set of lines that define your value and your mission and your vision, but really the culture is what happens within the organization and what leaders do, right? How you feel, how you come to work, how is it that you relate to the community and to one another, expectations, performance, all of that. And I think that for us, culture is starting to be more about how do we create a good model where we become good citizens, right? Where we can relate to one another, where we can drive equity, when we can see injustices and really bring those forward, have those difficult and hard conversations, and promote justice and all those pieces. It's changing, but I think for us, that is what's becoming atrium health in our values, and how do we connect to our community. But again, I think that culture is really going to be what defines the actions that you see in leaders and in teammates, and what is really valued, right? So it's a very complex subject, but that's where we are right now.
It is a very complex subject, but I agree with everything that you said. And that's why it's so important, for young people, as they sit in front of these hiring managers, they're talking to people who work for the company, ask them what the culture is like. The chances are you're not going to get the same answer from that's likely. However, I think it will give you a clearer picture of, is this a place where I can see myself being successful? Are the norms and behaviors things that will make me feel like I'm an included and valued part, of the team? So even though they can't express it consistently from across 3 or 4 different people, you get a good idea of how things get done within an organization and whether that's a place where you can see yourself working.
Wonderful answers. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. I know we are just about here at the top of the hour. We do have a lot more questions coming in from the students, but I want to just thank some of the young people who are joining us because they're sharing some personal narratives with us, and they're relating to both of you. I just had a gentleman write in that he grew up with immigrant parents and asking about motivations and how you got to where you are. I have another person writing about joining the military and growing up in that community and how that's impacted them. So that brings me just to close, which I just want to say we are launching the Congressional Award Career Center, where there will be a dedicated area of our online presence that is really focused on offering these tips and advice from our board members, from our partners, from people who I think can make an impact in the lives of these young people by guiding them, by offering them suggestions. We're going to list links to jobs, to internships, to fellowships, to perhaps the mayor's youth employment program, depending on where they live, and other opportunities. As we get them, we are going to share them. But I encourage Gerard and Raymond, if you've not written anything about your experiences, this might be an opportunity for you all to share, continually post this webinar, because your paths, your journeys are so unique and powerful and meaningful. So I really just want to thank each of you for sharing just a little bit with us today. And again, you may see a lot of resumes coming your way. And so I hope that is helpful too. Thank you to the support of Atrium Health and to Boeing and to each of you. Thank you kindly. And to our Congressional Award community, thank you so much for joining us, and have a wonderful afternoon. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Erica. Pleasure, Raymond. Goodbye, everyone.